Welcome to Northwoods Kindred. I'm your go-lead Bode Bar, and on this channel we discuss all things Asatru Kindred related. So hit that subscribe button if you want to see how we do it in the Northwoods. In this video, we're going to brew two separate batches of a quick mead because Yule's coming up. Our mead quantity is getting a little bit low, so we're going to do two quick ones. One requires a little bit more equipment than the other, but you should be able to put together a batch of mead with nothing more than you can get at the grocery store, with one exception: a good quality pack of yeast, and I'll link to that in the description below. Coming up. So we're going to brew these, I'm going to call this a quick mead, and it's going to be super simple and very cheap to make. Less than it would cost you to go to the meadery and buy a bottle of mead. You'll be able to brew enough to make about 2 to 3 bottles of mead. So, equipment. This right here is just a glass wine jug from the grocery store. But if you want to buy wine in a jug and drink the wine and then save it, that's all that is. But in order to keep it even cheaper, I also bought a plastic water jug. Now, I wouldn't use a milk jug, and I would only use this once. And then the next time you brew, just buy another bottle of water and use that. And I have a fermentation lock here, which I will link to a couple different versions on Amazon. If you want to buy the fermentation lock and the cork, you're going to have to be specific about your cork size. It's going to have to fit your bottle that you have. So I can't really list that. I can point to some of them, but you're going to have to do the measurements. Alternatively, we're going to use a Ziploc bag and a rubber band as a fermentation lock for this one. So we're going to go really budget. We could also use saran wrap if we needed to, or you could probably fit one of these in there if you wanted to buy one. So that's what we're going to use for equipment. We're going to brew 2 gallons. We have 5 pounds of honey from the grocery store, which is getting more and more expensive, but I think you can get it for under 20 bucks if you buy the Food Club brand. So my first step is to take this honey and dissolve it in warm water. I don't want to boil it. I don't want to boil the water. I just want to get it warm enough so that the honey dissolves in it very well. And then we're going to split it right down the middle and pour it both into these 2 jugs and then fill them up with water. So let's do that. I don't need the whole gallon. But I can add that back in the batches after I put the honey in the water. Now, while we wait for this to heat up, I want to talk a little bit about sterilization. I did not sterilize or do anything to this, or the bag, or the rubber band. This is all just as it comes out of the packaging. This, on the other hand, these have been sterilized. And if you just fill your kitchen sink up with water, warm water, and throw in just a cap full of regular household bleach, let your stuff soak in there for a while, and then rinse it until you can't smell the bleach anymore, then you're in a good shape. Now, my mentor, Gothi, taught me 20 years ago how to brew mead, and I've been brewing mead for our rituals ever since. So I think that it's really a valuable skill that anybody who's a North pagan to have, so that you have home-brewed mead to offer at your rituals instead of some store-bought stuff that may or may not be okay, or whiskey or anything like that. You get to put money, heart, attention, soul into it. It's a living, breathing entity, just like a livestock. It requires time, it requires patience, and it requires a little bit of knowledge, just as animal husbandry does. So it's a very good practice as a leader of a kindred to brew your own in order to sacrifice it. And in order for that to come out really well, sterilization is definitely your friend. So the water's getting a little on the warm side, so I'm going to go ahead and try and dissolve all of this honey in it. And what will happen is there'll be some residual honey inside the bottle. I'll just get some hot water right out of the tap, shake it up, and pour that in too, and make sure we get every drop of honey out of here, all that goodness, because it's expensive, and that's our fermentable sugars. So I've seen some people trying to brew and trying to pour the honey directly into a carboy or into a bottle through a funnel or something like that. You can try that if it makes more sense to you, but it's going to take a long time, and it'll never get really mixed up good. It's always better to just dissolve it in a little bit of warm water and then pour it in, and it's a lot easier to work with, and it'll cut your time in half, I promise. The water's just on the warm side, and just moving pretty slow. It's about 105 degrees right now. about where our water is at. I just want to get all of this honey to mix in really well with the water. See, I can still get honey off the bottom. It's not in the middle yet, so we'll just keep stirring. So it looks like the honey's all the way dissolved. Because the pot's so full, I'm going to go ahead and bail it into there until I get it down a little bit farther. So I've bailed out a fair amount, and now I'm going to pour some into here. I can pretty much pour it with the pitcher now, possibly without making a mess. Honey and water, it's a sticky, icky, gooey mess, and that's just part of the process. And if I put a little too much in one bottle or the other, I can just balance it out because it's exactly the same brew. We can figure that out as we go. Both supposed to be about a gallon, but I feel like this gallon is a bigger gallon than that gallon. You know what I mean? So there we are, and I'll say that those are divided up fairly equally. I'm going to use the remainder of the bottled water I have left. And I'm going to have to leave it some headspace because once it starts to ferment, it's going to build some foam up, and that foam could flow out. So I want to make sure that there's enough headspace for that to work. So that, and we're going to fill this the rest of the way up right out of the tap. So now we've essentially just brewed 2 1-gallon batches of mead, and what I'm going to do is just, I have 1 package of yeast. I'm just going to cut it and split it up between the 2 of them. Normally I use 1 package of yeast like this. I prehydrate it and go through this little process before I pitch it into a 5-gallon batch. So half of this package is more than enough for each of these 1-gallon batches. We're just going to put a little in here, a little in there, a little in here, a little in there. Now I didn't do specific gravity checks, I didn't do anything to see what the alcohol content is, I didn't do anything. We just heated up some water to about 100, 105 degrees. We added the appropriate amount of honey, which is about 2.5 pounds of honey per gallon. And then we put it in the container. We didn't add any of the extra fancy stuff. Here we have a fermentation lock. Fermentation should begin probably within the day. And then in the absence of a fermentation lock, we're just going to put this Ziploc bag and a rubber band. So when I notice that this bag starts filling up with pressure, then I'll poke a needle hole in it, and then it'll keep positive pressure inside the bag. It'll let all that carbon dioxide out, and we should be in good shape. A balloon, like a party balloon, would probably be your best bet because it will stay on here a little bit better. This lid doesn't really want to hold this rubber band, but it'll do. Once it's set, it'll stay there. And that's where we go. So we should have anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks, we should be in good shape. And what I'll do is I'll just watch this, and I'll watch the reaction, and as it's going to kick off and it's going to have a really quick reaction, and then that reaction is going to start to slow down. Once it slows down, I'll just pour a little bit in the cup, taste it. If it's fermented enough, then it's good enough. It's good. So it's a quick mead. It's not supposed to be award-winning. It's supposed to get you through it. But if you have a Kindred and you're running it out of an apartment somewhere and you don't really have a lot of space to run 10, 15, 20 gallons like I do, you can certainly do this on a perpetual basis. Every month, maybe even at the gathering, you knock together a gallon, and at the next gathering you use it for ritual, and then sort of a continual thing that you and your Kindred can contribute to and do. And one thing I really, really want to iterate is that you saw what I put in here. I put in honey, water, and yeast. There is no combination of that will ever make poison. So you don't have to worry about it. You're not going to brew anything that's going to hurt you. The only thing it's going to do is alcohol, and if you really screwed it up, you might end up with vinegar. But that's all that's going to happen. You're not going to hurt yourself by doing this. You're going to make alcohol, and alcohol is going to do what it does, which is to intoxicate. And it'll be a lower quality alcohol. It'll be a lesser strength because it's not going to be able to ferment all the sugars that are in there in the amount of time that it's brewing. In the case of other alcohols, we would generally ferment all the sugars and then kill the yeast and then back sweeten it to just the right level. But this is something that's going to take a little bit more practice and everything, but you can't hurt yourself. So jump right in there and try it out. Honey water yeast, have a good time. Now, one more thing, when these things start cooking off, sometimes they get pretty hot. And by hot, I mean they start going with a fury, and it can bubble right back up, right out of the fermentation lock or right through the bag. So I would suggest, if you're living in a small space and you don't have a really good place to keep it, do something like that. Put a containment unit underneath it. Half brewed mead is very hard to get out of your carpet, and it's a sticky, icky mess, and it will end up giving you ants when the summertime comes around. So the best bet, be cautious, put it back in the brew pot, put it in a bucket, or even on a cookie sheet, someplace out of the way, because if it flows over, you're not going to want to deal with that mess. So one of the things that my mentor taught me was to always bless the batch of mead, just as you would a feast or any other tool that you were using to venerate the gods. So mead is definitely one of those tools, so we're going to bless it, and this is how we do it. Odin, chieftain of the gods, winner of the sacred mead of poetry, war god, father of mankind, I ask that you use your gifts of life as you give this mead life, as you welcome it into your service, as we use it to honor you, your folk, and your kin amongst the gods. Hail Odin. So this project was actually suggested by my Discord community because they needed to get some mead brewed before Yule. So you won't actually see the end product of this. We're going to get this video out really quick. I assure you it's going to work, but then check back in a couple of weeks. We'll do an update or a community post or something that actually shows the result of it. But for now, I want to get the video out so that my Discord community can make a quick mead and serve it to their kinsmen for Yule. Discord is in the link tree in our banner. May your newfound knowledge and skill lead you down paths that you didn't even know existed. Dorvigi, my friends.